Okay, so we got our circuit parts. So the circuit is going to hook to your ventilator. Every vent has an inspiratory and expiratory. What it will say will depend on the ventilator, so you know, but typically there's going to be like an in or an out. So some have an arrow pointing out and an arrow pointing in. Some say to patient, from patient. Morning, how are you?
Good, how about yourself?
Good.
Can I borrow Carl for just a couple of
Sure
minutes?
can. Some,
Everybody doing well?
so this has an arrow down and an arrow up. So down or that way means to the patient, this or in. Some just say inspiratory, expiratory. So you're going to take your circuit, and you also need this piece. This piece is going to help hook you to your humidifier. So you'll notice that this PB ventilator over here has a humidifier mounted to it on the front, but not all the vents have a humidifier mounted to it. So it's because what we're going to do in the classroom is just hook to the containers that the water goes in, because we don't need to have a heater on every single, I'll move it closer so you guys can see. This is one particular kind of heater. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the two different kind of heaters that are available out there, and the little containers that the water goes in. And I have to grab one container. Take it back. And we kind of looked at these some last term too. So understand, in your hospital, almost everybody uses heaters. The only time we might not use a heater is someone who's going to be on the vent less than 24 hours. So maybe like a post-op patient where they'll use the HME. And the HME is just going to go all the way up here between the circuit and your patient. And we looked at HMEs last term, so I'm not going to really talk about those a lot right now. If your patient is on an HME and their secretions become very thick and you're having a hard time suctioning, then you have to switch them over to a heater. Most patients that are on more than 24 hours are going to end up on a heater. So to recap, we have two different kind of heaters that we pretty much see clinically. And the only difference is that they would be attached to the front of your vent like this. We just don't have a heater for every vent. But we do have the containers. And the most difficult part of the heater is just knowing how to hook it in. So you're going to use the containers even if your ventilator doesn't have a heater, because the only thing you do when you have this is just slide it on here like that into place. So everything else is hooking it up. So if you can hook it all up, I know that you can manage to take it to here and slide it in. Okay? And then turn on the heater. And then the other one I'm going to go over in a minute. So this heater is called Fisher-Paykel. It's considered what we call an auto feed heater. So when you first get it, this is like all wound up and together. So there's two ports. Some of the Fisher-Paykel newer ones, there's actually an in and out port on the top. So it'd be like coming in from the ventilator, going out to the patient. If it doesn't say any different on the top here, then you can connect to whatever you want to either port. So this container, so this is nothing but a water collection container. So if it looks a little different and it's a little brand different, it doesn't matter. It's just a water collection chamber. So one of the things that you'll learn about mechanical ventilation is manufacturers can get switched on things. And so you might find a new package that has something that looks a little different, but it's going to be a water container with two spouts on it. And like this other one I'm going to show you is a water container with two spouts on it. And then how the water gets inside will just depend. So this is an auto feed, and so this you would just take and spike into a sterile water for inhalation bag. And then it will auto feed into here as needed. So obviously we're not gonna spike the bag every day and have water everywhere. But so that's all you're missing there, is a bag hanging, and you would spike that and be ready to go. So if you were setting this up for a patient, you would hang the bag, you would have this down here ready, but you wouldn't spike it. Because what if the patient ends up not coming for some reason? You don't know for sure if you're getting a vent ready for somebody that they're gonna end up going on it unless they're sitting right next to you. So what we have to do now is add this short tube. The short tube is gonna connect the air to the water, and then we can pick up water and have it go to the patient. So my little saying is we're gonna take the short tube and go from, well, let me put a filter on there first, sorry. We also need filters. I put filters on both sides. What your hospital does is gonna be a little different everywhere. Some places only put filters on the exhalation side to protect what is known as the exhalation port, which I'll show you in a minute. I put filters on both sides because I want to filter both sides. So there's also plugs for the heaters, but we're not going to plug those in because we don't need to get them hot and burn ourselves. So in the clinical setting, you'll plug it in and you'll turn it on, and then what are you going to run it at? 37, because we bypassed the upper airway, right? Okay. So short hose is going to go from inspiration. So air is coming from the ventilator going to the water. This one doesn't say in or out, so this one doesn't matter. And then we're going to take our inspiratory side, and the air is going to go from the water to the patient. Air goes from the ventilator to the water, and then from the water to the patient. Because we don't want to pick up air and have it going to the exhalation side. Now we're humidifying the air going back to the ventilator. So the exhalation side is going to hook to the exhalation side of the PB. And I don't need this filter. The PB, this vent in particular, is the only one that has a built-in exhalation valve. So every other vent, you would put this on it and then hook your circuit to that. So this one here is going to go right here. And I will do a separate demo on each ventilator once we get past the beginning here. So now I'm hooked air from the ventilator to the water, from the water to the patient, and then air going back exhalation into the exhalation side. And then you can put your Ballard or whatever else you need on here depending on what you're doing. You also need, well, let me time out for a second. So that's how that humidifier works. So if you don't have this humidifier on here, the only difference you're gonna do is you're just gonna let it hang like it was hooked up to the heater. So that way you're practicing how to hook it up, because there's also wires that go in here as well. If you didn't have a heater and you were using an HME, you wouldn't use these extra parts in the water container. You would just take your circuit and hook it directly to the filter. And you would skip this part. Make sense? Okay. So this, we talked about last term. This is a Concha water heater. And again, you would see it mounted right here instead of this one. So it's not mounted, so I just want to show you, this is what it would look like attached to the ventilator, remember, with the Concha water pack. So remember, if I'm taking this off, what do I not want to do? Pull the bottom port out. Water's going to go everywhere. Someone will do it. You'll never do it again. Just clean it up and move on. So if, say my patient passed away or we took him off the vent, I have all this excess water in here. I have to take it like this, and then I have to disconnect these tubings like this, and you need to clamp them off so the water that's inside of here doesn't go everywhere. So I would undo them, and then I would take this and put it over the sink and drain the water out and throw it away. But now let's say I'm using it for the first time. I got it out. I now have to take these and spike my water, and then go ahead and put it back over here. Gotta line it up. That needs to be below. And like that. So if you don't, I'm gonna grab one that's actually not in there. I'm gonna spill water everywhere, and I almost did it. So in the supply room, you guys, you'll find this container in a bin that says Concha Column, and you'll find this container in a bin that says Fisher Paykel. So you get them out when we do lab and you put them away. Anything you put on the ventilator during class needs to be put away at the end of class. And I'm a stickler about it. No one will leave until everything's put away. So everybody help clean up your vent. That's how we leave them here in our supply room. So again, 2 ports, water collection area. And you would just be having this, putting this down in here. So I'd put this down in here, have this go through the bottom, hook it up to my Concha column. Remember, if you've been using this, this will be very hot. So you have to let it cool down. Don't just turn it off and pull it out and put your hand on it because you're gonna burn yourself. Yes, Keely?
You probably already went over this last year, but when do
It's
you
okay.
change the water for the Concha? Like, how low does it need to be?
There's a replace line down here at the bottom. So as soon as it gets down there,
Okay.
if it's almost there and it's the end of your shift, you replace it. That's the common courtesy to do between RTs. If it's half, same thing, there's a replace line on there so you'll know when to get a new one. Yes,
How long does it take to cool down?
maybe 15 minutes.
Okay.
You can like pull it up a little bit and just tap it to see if it looks like, after 10 or 15 minutes, it won't burn you.
Okay.
But you want to make sure it's not too hot to put in the garbage because you can always pull it up like this, but if it's super hot, you don't want to put it in the garbage. So otherwise, you're just going to hook. So let's say we were using this one over here instead. So there's no heater attached. You have to practice with both because you have to know how to use both because you'll see both kinds in your facilities. And if your preceptors are asking you to get water columns, Concha columns, or water bags, you surely need to be able to do that. So if I was using this one instead, short hose to one side, long hose to the other. Same way. And then it would just hang. Okay?
And so
It doesn't matter what thing.
So with the
Not on this
columns,
one.
it doesn't matter what size?
No, it does not. Has no difference. Yes?
With it being, do we still need to spike the sterile bottle water for it to be humidified for the?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I have it hooked over here, I've got my things clamped off. Once it's all hooked up, I'll unclamp and it will fill with water. And this is made to continuously feed into here. And when this gets to the replace line, you'll put a new one on it. Okay, makes sense? Any questions on this part? Concha water column, Fisher Paykel, or auto feed, depending on whatever the wording is. Okay? Now you need wires. The wires are what are used to sense the temperature. This is where you also have to remember things can change and my wires might look different. But at the end of the day, a set of wires is going to have a short temp probe and a long temp probe. They might be different colors, like this one is orange, this one's blue, this one's orange, this one's blue here. For purposes of in the lab, any of these end connectors, there's one that looks like this, there's a blue one, and there's a yellow and a blue one. Those are made to actually hook into the side of an actual heater so it senses the temperature. This one goes on the bottom, this one's going on the side. But you're not gonna hook those up in here, you're just gonna let them hang. So when you have an actual heater, the only additional thing you have to do is hook the plug in to the bottom or the side and put the container in. Everything else you'll do here. So this plug will go nowhere. It's just gonna hang down. The end of the blue and the gray plugs will go nowhere. They will just hang down. So, which either set, you have to know how to use any of the wires because colors can change and look different. But this is where one of the things as an RT, you have to be able to be familiar with different parts that you've never seen before just because it's a different manufacturer and they're different colors. However, I will have a short heater wire. The short one goes at the humidifier. So this goes right here, and you just have to plug it in. You can't have any holes open, you guys, in your circuit, or what's gonna happen, air is gonna come out of it. And I can promise you, you won't remember this in the beginning, and you're gonna tell me your vent's not working, and I'm gonna say it's because it's not hooked up right, and I'm not gonna tell you what's wrong. I'm not telling you what's wrong to be mean. I'm telling you what's wrong because you need to learn. I'm gonna know instantly every time I come to a ventilator what's wrong with something like that. So when I tell you it's not hooked up right, you need to look at these things because the vent won't work right. You'll hear air coming out. So that's when you're gonna have to start learning how to troubleshoot and look at things and figure out what's wrong. And I make you do that on your own. So you learn how to do it. Long temp probe, no matter what color it is, no matter what it looks like, goes here, right where we said on the inspiratory side. Okay? So if you don't hook those up and you just hook this to a test line, your ventilator is going to have a fit because you have big holes. There's also a place here where this can leak out. Sometimes your connectors go bad, sometimes your filters go bad, and there'll be little cracks and things that you're not aware of, and you just have to start changing things till it starts to work. Those are things we'll be going over. So that's my gray and orange cable. Now my other one is blue. See, I have a long end. Where's the long end go? Right here. Short end goes where? At the humidifier. Uh-oh, don't do that. Don't put your circuit on the floor. Because I'm going to say no circuits on the floor, and I'm going to make you pick it up, because no circuits on the floor in real world. And you're going to take this one. Now this one, there's a little tab that has to go over the blue. And then to take it out, it's kind of weird. It seems like it's going to break, but it's not. This one you twist. Hear that noise? That's normal. So you pop it in, get it into place, twist to take it off. Here's where I also want to tell you guys, things break. Please be careful in the lab and use everything as if you paid for it and it was going on your family member. However, even in the best of circumstances, things break. So I'm saying to be careful, but if something breaks, tell me. So many times people put something away broken, and then I don't know it's broken. This stuff doesn't last forever. I have to get replacement circuits and things, so if it breaks, let me know. If it's not working right, I sometimes tell you to put it back in because I know it's a problem because I want you guys to learn how to troubleshoot. But if it's something that physically breaks and we can't use it anymore, I need to know so I can get a new one.
So what typically breaks on it?
The connector, like the wires start to go bad and you can actually see the wires in there. Otherwise, the connectors might break off at some point. So all of that's together now with my wires. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Haley?
Didn't you put the orange one in those same spots, or? Oh, so you can use either or?
Yes,
Oh, I thought
that's
you
my
could
point.
both. I'm like,
No, it's one or the other. One set of wires, one short wire, one long wire.
okay.
Short goes at the humidifier, long goes at the patient. Just think about how it could reach and stay connected at the same time. Mitch?
So, at my clinical site on Saturday, they had me actually set up a G5
Uh-huh.
for just for future use and
Yep.
and stuff. And it has two sets of wires.
G5 has a flow sensor. That's not a wire, it's an extra sensor.
No, because they gave me the bag of, and then I hooked it up to the sensor, and then there was two plugs on the side.
Oh, on the side of the heater?
Yeah.
Yes, some of these cords have two plugs. That's where I was saying they would just hang.
Okay.
There are some over there that have two plugs, but we're not gonna hook them in for right now. So if you have HMEs, your Ballard, any of that stuff would go on there next. But for purposes of here, we're gonna put a test lung in place. This is your patient. So to the ventilator, it thinks this is your patient. So always keep that in mind. And as we go through the different vents, you'll learn that there's certain things you have to do. Like on the PV, you can't have it hooked up to the test lung when you first turn it on or else it goes crazy. And that's also on your cards and your slicks you guys got during your presentations. This is when you're gonna wanna get those out. It was the group that did the vent setup with you, because it has all the little tricks, and that's gonna tell you how to calibrate. So that's how we would be doing it, and then you wanna just have it hung some way so it's not gonna fall on the floor, and the test lungs break, so you gotta be careful with those too. So just make it work, whatever works. Okay, so the other thing that you will have to do is put your connectors on the hoses. So these vents were left with connectors on them, which is a no-no. These two connectors are gonna get put on the vents when you come into lab and use them, and you'll take them off and put them away when you're done. So the way a ventilator should be found is it should have nothing on it, no filters, no anything, and all the cords in the back should be wound up. Make it presentable, guys. This is your supply room. So the cords and the power cord will be wound up in the back. So when you take it out, well, no, the power cord needs to be plugged in so the battery stays charging. So connectors, whoops. Am I ever gonna put this in the wall by itself without something connected to it? No, I'm not.
She wanted a nice distance.
Yeah. So I'm gonna hook this on, and I'm gonna hook this on. And then remember, if two of you are using the same outlet, what can you put in there? The splitter. Yep.
So, if they don't have a quick connect system, do you just hook it up to the flow meter?
All the ICUs have these now.
Okay.
Only a really old ICU might not have air, but you'll have quick connects in all the ICUs. You just pop them right in. So if you need to give a nebulizer treatment and you're not using the Aerogen, you can use this guy. This is just a T adapter. Where you put it depends on your place, but you could put it all the way back here. Well, that wouldn't work. With an adapter to have it stood up, or you can just put it all the way up here. So the nice thing about this is it's spring loaded. We got this out last term. It goes perfectly in line. Let's just put it in there like this and like this. And then you cap it when you're not doing your breathing treatment. When you're ready to do your breathing treatment, it pops right in and opens the one-way valve. When you're done, you take it out and cap it back off. That keeps you from having to open your circuit. Yes? Mitch?
So that'll only, nebulize the medication every time we take the breath?
No, you hook it up to a flow meter,
Oh, okay.
like you normally would. So you'll hook it up to your flow meter and run your treatment. Yes?
Could you also put it where the filter is?
Yes.
Attached to the vent?
Yes. That's just gonna depend on your place.
Okay.
So you it's like a T valve adapter. It's like a one-way T valve for the nebulizer. This is the Aerogen that we talked about a few weeks ago. Remember, I showed you the video? This will go in all the way back here at the heater. Your circuit will attach to it. So you plug it in. Did I not bring the nebulizer? I thought I brought the nebulizer. Anyways, plug it into little Aerogen nebulizer. Plug in the other end to the Aerogen, and then this little plug goes right here. And that's how you would use that. And you put your medicine in right here. Please note that the official name for this, if you're not writing it down, or well, it's going to be on the video, but vibrating mesh nebulizer. In NBRC testing world, the Aerogen is called the vibrating mesh nebulizer. So when you get to term 5, don't go, what the hell is that, Ms. Foss? You never told us about that. I'm going to pull up this video and I'm going to say, yes, I did. No. Never heard of it. Ms. Foss didn't teach us that. The vibrating mesh nebulizer. So that's that. So that's where you'll put that for doing your breathing treatments. You can give MDI treatments in line with the ventilator. Yes, you can. There are some little T adapters like this with an MDI port on it. You would just squirt them in there. The other thing you could do is if this is hooked to my vent circuit in line, and this piece, the little cap can come off, and there's a little cap that has a little port on it. I tried to find ours and I couldn't find it. But it's a little, it looks just like this cap, except it has a little port on the end of it, and you can shoot your MDI in there as well. So you definitely can do MDIs in line with the vent, and that's how you do it. Remember, if you have HMEs and they have to come out, you have to bypass them during breathing treatments. Sam?
For the Aerogen, when you're nebulizing it, it doesn't quite work. How did you troubleshoot the Aerogen?
The Aerogen either works or it doesn't. There's no troubleshooting. Oh, you just have to get a new cup. They're pretty reliable, though. They don't really break down much. Yes,
Can you
Counselor?
repeat what you said about the HME and the treatments?
Take it
out. That bypassing the HME, I said when you're doing SVNs or MDIs, remember you have to take out the HME, do your treatment, and then put it back in.
What happens if-
Otherwise, you're nebulizing the HME and bronchodilating the filter.
I've been doing that a lot.
Oh, don't do that.
Making the filter a little bit more.
Don't do that.
Isn't the HME coming straight from the ventilator though?
No, that's the filter. The HME is the heat and moisture exchanger that
Oh,
goes
yeah.
all the way at the other end. Don't forget.
Is that just for a trach or is that for?
No, you could use it on ET too. Yep. The other part of the ventilator that I want to talk about is the exhalation valve. Once I tell you this, I'm going to hook this up in the back to just do the last few little things. So the exhalation valve is a very critical piece of your ventilator in your circuit. Sometimes it's part of your circuit, sometimes it's part of your ventilator, but your ventilator doesn't work Hi, Louie.
Hello.
Your ventilator doesn't work if you don't have an exhalation valve. Can you do me a favor while I'm telling about the exhalation valve? Can you hook up that servo with just a circuit?
Yep, wanna grab a circuit?
Yeah, and a test lung.
Hey Louis, when you're done, Ms. B said to go to 160.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. So, what was I saying? Exhalation valve. So the exhalation valve is a very important part of the ventilator. Some are connected to the circuit, some are external on the ventilator, some are internal on the ventilator. But your ventilator won't work if your exhalation valve doesn't work. The exhalation valve is simply a valve with a magnet that opens and closes. And it allows the vent to go from inhalation to exhalation. So if that valve doesn't work, the vent can't deliver the breaths or stop the breaths, and so it'll malfunction on you. So what happens is during inhalation, so we're sending a breath to the patient, the exhalation valve closes. So if it's like in this position all the time, it closes during inhalation so the breath can go to the patient. And then it opens during exhalation so the air can go back into the vent. Close, go to the patient, open, go back to the vent. Make sense? So if that valve doesn't work, then the vent can't cycle in between inhalation and exhalation. The reason this is important is because exhalation valves can go bad. They also can get filled with water or sticky, icky stuff from nebulizer treatments, which is why we put filters on the exhalation side. So mucomist and some of that stuff will wreak havoc on your exhalation valve. Yes, Mitch?
You have a patient on the vent, how long before you change those filters? Or is it just an as?
Only if needed, if they're soiled, or you think that there's a problem that, if you're giving mucomist to somebody, you're gonna have to change them because it's gonna get gross in there. So otherwise it's just as soiled. And remember, we don't change vent circuits unless they're visibly soiled. We wanna keep our circuit closed. Ballards get switched every 72 hours. Yes,
Can
Kaylee?
you repeat why you said you would change it for mucomist?
Because the mucomist is thick and icky and it clogs up your filter. So it can cause problems. It's gross. I think it should just stop using it everywhere, but
Smells awful.
that's my personal opinion. So on the Puritan Bennett ventilator, our 840, the exhalation valve is inside. So it's internal, we can't get to it. This filter is here to protect it. So it will filter everything. It also has water collection at the bottom and a little spout that you can open and drain it. It's all the way down here.
So, is that per patient too, or?
Yes, this filter is one per patient. So remember, that's gonna be one of the things you take on and take off, because you also need to know, which you'll learn this, but if I flip up my little valve here and take it off, and then I put it back in and I don't flip the valve down, the vent won't work because it's not locked into place. So, but yes, that's one per patient. So exhalation valve in the PB, up internal, we can't do anything with it. On the G5, can you guys pass this back to Louie, because we're gonna have to plug in this one too. In a minute. Thanks. Okay, the G5. Oh, somebody's paper is here too, by the way.
Oh,
Is it yours? Okay.
Yeah.
This is the exhalation valve on the G5. So this actually comes out and twist it, and it pulls down like this. You have a good view of this on there, right? Okay. So your exhalation valve looks like this. This is your little magnet. On the G5, it says down on the opposite side of where your little magnet is. Face down.
Are you saying Louis or Miss Peterson?
Well, Louis here, but I still need him for a few minutes.
Okay.
And Miss Peterson's not here yet.
Okay, we're ready whenever, if you have time.
Okay. So if this is flipped upside down, the vent won't work, and I've also discovered that it will mess with your PEEP. So your PEEP reading is off, and you cannot figure out why. It's because this exhalation valve is in wrong. So keep it in mind. It's sometimes a little troubleshooting thing, so maybe you'll see it someday. So this is gonna go, so your expiratory side is always gonna go onto here. And this is gonna go back in, and you have to lock it into place. There's a little tab, so if you don't get it quite right, you gotta twist it so that the tab. That's still not quite right. There we go. So the tab is gonna lock it into place now.
So they've been having me like clean and calibrate the vents at Lodi,
Mhm.
and so you're saying a lot of these troubleshooting problems, are those something that you could discover like while you're calibrating it, or is it something that you discover when you've had it? Like,
Either
already hooked up to the
one,
patient?
you could find it either time, it's a good question, Mitch.
And then for switching out the valves there, or the little magnets, are they generally all the same color, or do you have different colored ones? 'Cause-
They're the same per manufacturer and per ventilator.
okay,
So every vent, like this G5, everyone will look like that.
Okay, so essentially we might have a different G5 at Mercy.
Is it a different color?
Well, yeah, they were blue.
Oh.
They were the exact same thing.
Oh, so maybe
different
it's just
color.
a newer valve. This is an old valve that's been in here forever because we haven't had to replace it. But that's single patient use. I don't know for sure if they go through sterile processing or not. This part does, but
Yeah,
I
they
don't
said
know if.
take
the-
it out, wash the whole thing out.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Replace the new valve.
So that's where the exhalation valve is on that one. On the LTV, it's actually external. Because you'll note that this circuit is just a single limb for the most part with an extra side. So it's different than the double circuits you see on your regular vents. And this is not uncommon for like a transport vent or a home care vent to just have one tube. So this is the exhalation valve on this circuit. So the air goes to the patient. That valve is closed. When the patient exhales, it comes back out and goes through the valve as it opens. And then it just has a pressure line on it. Luna?
So that whole circle is just replacing?
Yes. Yep.
I was just gonna say, do you put a filter in between?
No.
Or if it's
No.
just replacement?
But it is a problem that sometimes we have is these get water in them and the valves stick. And so know that that's a common problem with LTVs is these valves need to be replaced or dried out. Sometimes you can just take it apart and shake it out, get some excess water out of it. The Draeger, we have two different models. The new one and the old one. They're essentially the same. The old one's called the Avita XL. This one's called the Infinity C500. Their screens are essentially the same, just one is more updated. The exhalation valve is in a different place. On the Avita, it's up underneath. On this one, it's right here. So this one, you take this and you twist it. And if you lift this up, it'll come out. And then that's your exhalation valve on this one. There's a little spot right there. And then you would just take it. The other Draeger, it's got a little latch. You have to undo it to take it out. You'll see it. And then it'll go back into place. And then if everyone can turn their attention back here for a minute. You want to, yeah. You should be able to unplug it. Sorry, guys. Oh, you might need to run through it real quick then. Parker, can you find a place where you're not blocking people's? Can you? Man. Everybody ready? Okay. So the servo is actually, they call it an expiratory cassette, and you'll sometimes see it say check the expiratory cassette during the calibration. So on the servo, to get to the exhalation valve, you have to push this, there's a button right here. So this pushes up and then this pulls out. And then the expiratory cassette is right in here. Do you want to, yeah? Okay. And so there's a button that you push right here. You're gonna push that down and then lift it out. And of course I unhook it now. So this is the button I pushed, and then the expiratory valve is right here. So it's just that this one calls it an expiratory cassette instead. So when I'm gonna put it back away, and sometimes it's not housed properly and it's not in all the way. So when I'm gonna put it away, this little groove right here is gonna go on this little metal rod right here, and then you're gonna push it down. This is not all the way in. The button has not popped back up right now, so don't be mistaken to think it just sets in there. You gotta push it in, and you'll hear that click, and the button will pop back up. That is completely in place. So you might find that you open it, and it's just sitting like that, and you're like, oh, the button's depressed, I already know it's not in all the way. Luna?
So do we just take that out to change the extra result, or do you change that whole piece?
This piece goes to sterile processing in between patients, and just would get replaced if it would have to go to biomed to get replaced. So now I'm gonna push it back in, and now I know it's in good, and then I can close that one off. So to demonstrate, oh, I forgot I unhooked it. Okay, so what I was talking about before, so right now we have our air in our O2 hoses hooked up into the wall. So if I disconnect my, air, you're gonna see the FiO2 is gonna drop down. No, it's gonna go up, sorry. It's gonna go up to 100%, and it's gonna say air supply pressure low. So the ventilator is still working, and my patient is still getting breaths right now because I have at least one 50 PSI source hooked in. So a pneumatic and electric. It's just, it's gonna now not have its air source, so it's gonna go to 100%, and it's gonna alarm, it's gonna tell you, hey, something happened to your air source. These types of situations are rare, but they do happen. So I'm gonna hook it back in now, and it'll go back to the way it was. Let it go back down to where it's supposed to be. And in a worst case scenario, my patient going from 40 to 100, it's not perfect, but it's better than the alternative that was gonna happen in a minute when I lose my oxygen source. And I'm gonna go from 40 to room air. And it's saying the oxygen concentration is high because it's above what I wanted it to be. Now it's saying I lost my O2 pressure, and you're gonna see it's gonna go down to room air. So again, it's functioning, it's just gonna change the FiO2 and it's gonna alarm because you're gonna have to do something. And you start wheeling around a bunch of tanks is what you're gonna do. Bringing H tanks and M tanks to people's rooms to get them by until they figure out what's going on. So that's what that is. Now the PB, as soon as Louis is done with the calibration, I'll show you what it sounds like so you know if the internal air compressor comes on.
Last time.
Okay. And so you see right now I'm running. Oh, does anybody hear what's happening right now? Do you hear the air?
Mm-hmm.
This right here doesn't have a little spout on the top of it like it's supposed to. And it's got my PEEP at 0 because I'm having a low problem, so I'm losing pressure. So if I cover it, so troubleshooting, and see how you could hear the air coming out? So I knew just from listening to it that something was wrong. That's how your air needs to get trained to know that that's something wrong. You shouldn't hear any of that like I have right now. It should just be going into the vent, which would just make a little puff sound. That's normal.
I thought it was the lung.
This is not. Doesn't make that noise. This is a leak.
Wow.
That's what I thought.
So now you know what it, yeah, now you know.
Awesome.
Troubleshooting 101. Okay, so now our Puritan Bennett vent.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so when you first turn this ventilator on, I'm gonna just do this real quick. You're gonna hear the air compressor come on because it's part of the testing. So we're gonna turn it on. That's the air compressor. So it's running its test. I'm currently hooked up to air. So it's just testing that it's working and then it shuts it down because it says I'm already hooked up to 50 PSI. I don't need my air compressor to run. But what happens if I lose my air? the air compressor is gonna kick in. So now you know it's running on the air compressor. And sometimes I will tell you, because the other thing you'll see is because it has a built-in 50 PSI source, this vent will actually run without either one hooked up. It's gonna tell you there's no O2 supply, but I can, well, not right now, because it's in the middle, it's the beginning. I could run it down to room air, and it would run without alarming, because it doesn't need the O2 source, and it has its 50 PSI air source from within, Mitch.
I was just gonna ask, cause I was looking at the quick connects and one of them looked like they looked like they were both the same color. Hoses looked like they were both the same color.
Yeah,
But
this
one
one's
of
got
them's
black,
one
yeah,
of them's green.
yep. So now it stops because I hooked it back in. So this is a vent that could run in a room of a patient who needed no additional oxygen with no piped in gas, because I can run off that air compressor. So you'll see at some point I may say, take it into there and just plug it in the wall, knowing that you can run it like that. So that's what you'll see there. Are there any questions? Yes, Haley?
How long does the compressor last again?
Forever, as long as it runs. The only time you can't use it is if it's on battery. It won't, it's too much. So if I have no power source, these ventilators have very minimal internal batteries in them. They're only meant to last long enough for you to come in and get a source. So normally, what plug do we put them in?
The red one.
The red plug, because it's automatically attached to the generator. But what if the generator fails? And that has happened as well. So the generator fails, you got probably like 5 or 10 minutes to get in here and get the patient on some alternative source, which would be bagging them until the situation gets fixed. That has happened at hospitals before as well, where the generator has failed. So know that your internal your internal battery does not last very long. It might say an hour in the manufacturer's guidelines, but they do not. You're trying to power this big machine here.
So for your hospitals, will they generally have like a backup, like form of ventilation? Like,
Yeah, your hands.
I mean, other than that, like, would they have like a pneumatic ventilator and then an
Nope.
electric? Okay.
Nope. It's meant that these are gonna continue working. There's so many safeguards. It's rare, but it has happened where the generator failed and you need to know what to do and to be prepared for that. But that's the rare case. So, worst case scenario, you gotta get your ambu bag out in your hands until something else can be done. Yep. Get your Wheaties, because that's a lot of work on those forearms, man. You gotta bag a patient for 4 hours. And sometimes, if your patient is really unstable, you won't be able to put them on the vent. You're just gonna have to bag them until they're stable again. Okay, questions? Any other questions now? Okay, so as we move forward, you'll see we normally bring some vents in here, and then in the other room, of course. This just helps with the amount of people over there. It gets warm in there. I'll turn the air on. But so what your project is now is to take a break until 5 till. Then you're going to take from 5